Welcome to this session, Where Do I Start? Phonology and Phonemic Awareness for Intermediate Teachers. I'm Robin Dixon, Pre-K through 5th grade ELA and Social Studies consulting teacher, and I will be your presenter for this session today. Let's begin by reviewing our learning intentions and success criteria. We are learning to understand phonological and phonemic awareness so that we can help intermediate students become stronger readers. You will be successful when you can determine the similarities and differences between phonological and phonemic awareness, and determine how to use 3 strategies in your classroom to develop these skills with older readers. So let's begin. I want you to think about, what do you already know about phonology and phonemic awareness? And I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being, I've never heard of those terms, and 5 being, I'm extremely familiar and I could teach it to others. So take a moment to reflect on your rating, and when you're ready, proceed to the next slide. All right, so some of you may have rated yourself a 1, and some of you may have been anywhere on that scale up to a 5. So we're going to start at the basics, and we are going to talk about what is phonological and phonemic awareness. What do those mean, and why are those important for our students? So let's first look at the definition of these two. And you'll often hear these terms, phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, and people will often use them interchangeably, when in fact they are very, very different skills. And so we're going to start with an overview of both of them, and then we're going to delve into each one individually. So when we talk phonological awareness, this is the awareness of the sounds that make up spoken language. It doesn't involve any letters, which we call graphemes, just sounds, which are called phonemes. And in phonemic awareness, it is the awareness of symbols or letters that represent sounds, which we call phonemes. So let's look at what exactly this means. So you'll see on the screen a picture of an umbrella, and we consider phonological awareness an umbrella term. And an umbrella term of phonological awareness means that we're looking at the following elements. We'll see word awareness. Notice right here, phonemic awareness falls under the umbrella of phonological awareness. So we'll look at that more in just a moment. Syllable awareness. In phonology, the idea that words are made up of syllables, understanding that today has 2 syllables, whereas cat has 1. When we look at phonological awareness, we're also looking at rhyming. Do we know that hat and bat rhyme? What's the first sound in a word? And alliteration. So alliteration being the repetition of a sound, such as Sally sells some super snakes, for example, that alliteration of that S sound. And so phonological awareness is our big umbrella term that we need to be aware of. And phonemic awareness falls under the umbrella of phonological awareness. So what exactly is phonology? So phonology is understanding sounds and the sound knowledge through hearing. When we're looking at phonology, we are looking at just the sounds. So we have not attached letters to those at all. It's manipulating the sounds of speech. And it's critical to note that this is the earliest and most necessary learning in order to learn to read. If students have strong phonology, they are likely to become strong readers. There is a strong connection between phonology and literacy. And if students are struggling in the upper grades with reading, it is often because this phonology piece is not well developed for that student. Phonology comes before ever adding letter knowledge to sounds. The awareness, for example, that a T makes the T sound, that comes later. When we look at phonology, just as we saw a minute ago, we're looking at rhyming, alliteration, the knowledge of syllables in words. So why is this important? We just talked a minute ago that it is one of the earliest predictors of reading proficiency. And David Kilpatrick says that every point in a child's development of a word level reading is substantially affected by phonological awareness, from learning letter names all the way up to efficiently adding new multisyllabic words to the sight vocabulary. And again, I'm highlighting the point that phonology is the single most important predictor of reading success. So in just a moment, we're going to transition to phonemic awareness. But if you'll see the picture on the screen, it's going to show you phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. And again, phonological awareness is the ability to hear and manipulate the spoken parts of words and sentences. Again, word awareness, syllables, onset and rhyme, and when we come over here to phonemic awareness, this is the ability to work with the words, the individual sounds or phonemes in spoken words. So remember again that a phoneme is the individual sound that we hear, and there are 44 phonemes in the English language. And notice that when we get into phonemic awareness, we're looking at blending, knowing that k, a, t makes the word cat. Phoneme manipulation. What happens if I take cat and I take away the k sound? What do I have left? I have at. Phoneme segmentation. Taking away and knowing that if I take the word cat, breaking it into its individual phonemes of k, a, t. Phoneme substitution. If I have the word cat, what happens if I take away the k and replace it with b? I get the word bat. So notice that phonological awareness, again, we're looking at that whole word awareness, whereas in phonemic awareness, we're looking at individual sounds and phonemes. On the screen, you will see a continuum of phonological awareness. Notice that the easiest element on the phonemic or the phonological awareness continuum is rhyming and alliteration. So those are our simplest skills. And notice that we become more complex. We get to sentence segmenting, knowing that a word is made up of a sentence is made up of 3 words. I am hungry. Syllables, blending and segmenting syllables within words. And then onset and rhyme is our next element. And notice that the most complex element on this chart is phonemic awareness. And again, this is where we're starting to work with individual sounds. And keep in mind that we are not doing any work with showing letters at this point. So we are not showing letters. When we start adding in and showing the visual representation of these sounds, that's when it turns into phonics. And we have students in grades 3 through 5 that we know are struggling with these areas. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at how can we add in elements of phonological and phonemic awareness and build these skills with our older readers. So as we are transitioning to the phonemic awareness piece, notice that's the most difficult part within the phonological awareness process. So phonemic awareness, again, highest level of phonological awareness, and it's understanding that letters represent speech sounds in words. So now we're understanding that cat has 3 sounds, that ball has 3 sounds, etc. It's knowing that words begin with the same sound, such as ball, bell, and best. So knowing that all of those words begin with b. It's also manipulating sounds, segmenting, isolating sounds. So when we're asking students, what happens if we have Send, and we would take off the S. What do we have left? We take S away, we have end. It's blending those sounds. All of these skills are involved in phonemic awareness. And again, let's look at the phonemic awareness continuum. So if we look at the continuum for phonemic awareness, we're working with individual sounds. Notice that phoneme isolation is at the bottom of the pyramid. That is our easiest skill within phonemic awareness. And that's simply saying, what sound do you hear at the beginning of bat? And the student is able to say B. Blending. What do I get when I put the sounds B, A, T together? And the student being able to blend those three sounds to say the word bat. Segmenting. What sounds do you hear in the word bat? And the student says to you B, A, T. Addition. Adding a phoneme or sound. So what new word do you get when you add S to bat? And a student would be able to tell you the word bats. Now, what word do I have left when I take the B sound away from bat? So they're taking away a sound, and they should be able to tell you that what you have left is at. And our hardest level of phonemic awareness is substitution. And in substitution, we're taking away and replacing a sound. So taking the word bat and replacing the B with the K sound, and students being able to tell you the word cat. Now, if you're curious about how your students are performing on phonemic awareness skills, there's a test called the PAST, and that test can help you to assess where your students are with phonological awareness, and will also give you, or phonemic awareness, and it will give you a breakdown of approximately the grade level of where your students are in phonemic awareness. There's also another test that happens to be called PAST, but it also looks at phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, and looks at can students segment syllables in words, notice that words rhyme, and includes phonemic awareness as well. If you are wanting additional information on either one of those screeners, or those tests rather, those diagnostic tests, please do not hesitate to reach out and I can send you a copy of each of them. So let's take the word rat and let's compare phonological awareness and phonemic awareness with phonics. In phonics, I said earlier that we are now looking at the letters to represent. In phonics, we are taking the letters to help represent the sounds. Remember that phonological awareness and phonemic awareness are both on the sound level. No letters are being taught yet. So let's look at the word rat. In phonological awareness, this would look, and you would realize that students would be able to hear that rat is one word, rat has one syllable, rat rhymes with cat, and rat starts with So you'll notice it's all of those skills that we saw earlier. Now, let's look at phonemic awareness. Hearing the individual sounds in rat. So now we're moving to the individual sounds, and students are able to say, oh, rat is made up of three phonemes or sounds, which are a, t, and being able to blend those three letters to hear and make the word rat. So again, those are sound level. Now, when we look at phonics, we're looking at the written word. So if we took the word and we put the word rat on an index card and we showed it to students and they were able to blend those three sounds to say the word rat, that is phonics. And these are all three different processes that are essential to reading. And in grades 3 through 5, we often think of the phonics piece, but we also have to realize that we have to build an awareness of phonological and phonemic awareness to get to that phonics piece. So as we talk through the remainder of this presentation, we will be covering all of these areas for your students in your classroom. And I have listed for you 3 articles on the screen, and if you want to take a picture of this, and this will give you some additional information and reading about phonemic and phonological awareness to develop and deepen your knowledge, these are great places to go. I especially love reading rockets, and if you search reading rocket and phonological and phonemic awareness, you will come up with great resources and great information which may further and add to your knowledge of these two processes of reading. So let's take a moment to debrief. So we've explored phonology and phonemic awareness. And so I want you to pause the video and I want you to think about what ideas resonate with you and what's a new piece of learning. Also, as you have been thinking about the students in your classroom, as you have been hearing these two beginning reading skills, can you think of students in your classroom that struggle and need assistance with these skills in order to help them to be successful at using these skills within phonics? So go ahead and pause the video. And once you have reflected on those questions, maybe you've written down some ideas for reflection later on, you may start the video and proceed to the next part of the presentation. So let's take a moment to see why older students need these skills. First of all, reading is not a visual process. Our brains are not naturally wired to learn to read, and we don't learn to read visually. So we need to give students the skills that they need to break the code of reading. Older students might need these because they might not have learned to hear the sounds in words, and that may be impacting their ability to apply that in phonics when we add letters to the reading process. You might be surprised at how many students really do struggle with these skills. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, they're in 5th grade, they should know how to rhyme words. But you might find it surprising how many students don't. I know when I taught 6th grade, in an elementary building, I was surprised how many 6th graders did not have these skills or could not tell me that word rhymed or what would happen if I changed the sound in a word and so on. And so you might be surprised how many of your students do need direct instruction and practice with these skills. Also, students need to understand that words are made up of sounds and phonemes, and we need students to be able to effectively and efficiently become proficient in blending, segmenting, isolating, and substituting those phonemes or sounds in words. Because again, this relates to our first point, that reading is not visual. Now, have students memorized some sight words that are hard to decode? Yes, but we cannot memorize every word we come across. So we want them to be able to blend these sounds to decode words when they see them in text, and they are using that phonics piece of reading. Also, many students do not fully develop these skills in the primary grade, especially now as we have students who are coming back to school full-time after being out during the pandemic and being in remote, and we know that students may not have fully developed these skills, and so we need to help fill those gaps for our students so that they become proficient readers. And as we saw earlier, these are foundational skills to reading success. So if we know that phonological awareness is important, then it's our responsibility to make sure that we're teaching those foundational skills even to our intermediate students who need them. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about as we go forward is something called clipping sounds. And clipping sounds are extremely important. And so when you are working on this skill with your students, it's important that you are clipping sounds, because if not, you're adding an additional sound to a word. So for example, if you or a student says buh, what's the first sound in the word? And they say buh. Notice that we're adding a short U sound to the B. So when students write, they might write B-U-A-T for bat, and you might be thinking, well, where'd that vowel sound come from? It's been added because when you say buh, they hear that short U sound as well. So when we say the sound that represents the letter B, it would be B. Notice that I cut that sound before the U. So I want to spend just a moment and I want you to listen to all the vowel sounds read being clipped and how they should sound when we're working with students and how we should be saying them and how we want students to say them. So let's watch this brief video to help us understand how to clip sounds.
A, apple, A. B, bat, B. C, cat, K. D, dog, D. E, egg, F. F, fish, F. G, gum, G. H, hat, H. I, igloo, I. J, jug, J. K, kite, K. L, lamp, O. M, man, M. N, nut, N. O, octopus, Ah. P, pan, P. Q, queen, Qu. R, rat, S, snake, S. T, top, T. U, up, V, van, V. W, wagon, W. X, fox, X. Y, yellow, Y. Z, zebra, Z.
So that video helped you to see what sounds should be like as you are working with those sounds with your students. So let's proceed to the next part. And in this next part of the presentation, we are going to look at specific strategies that you can use in your classroom. Now, these activities could be whole class, they could be part of small group during guided reading, or they could be activities that you do, for example, when you have 5 minutes before recess or you have a little bit of time because you finished another assignment or activity early. So let's look at these strategies. The first one is called word chaining. And the first thing that we could do with this word chaining is to work on this on an oral level. So meaning that we could work on this on the sound level. So word chaining would look something like this. You'll come up with a list of 10 words where we are changing a phoneme within the word. So for example, we could start with the word hop. And I would say to students, what word do you hear? Say the word hop. And the students say hop. And then you would say, now I want you to take hop, but instead of h, I want you to change it to t. And students would say the word top. All right, now I want you to say top, but instead of t, I want you to say ch. And a student would say chop. All right, now I want you to take the word chop, and I want you to change the ah to an I. And the student would say the word chip. Now, say the word chip, but instead of ch, say s. And a student would say sip. All right, say sip, but now instead of I, say ah. And a student would respond sap. All right, now I want you to say the word sap, but instead of p, I want you to say t. And a student would respond sat. All right, now I want you to say sat, but instead of t, say Student would respond Sam. And then I would have them do sack and sock. And notice the information that I can gain from this. I can tell if students are struggling with hearing the initial sound and manipulating the initial sound, or are they struggling with the medial sound or the ending sound. So I can also use this as information to help me know how to direct instruction. Now, I can also do this same activity, but I can do phonemic graphing word chaining. So what I can do is I can put all of these letters on cards, and then I can have students move cards to form words. So I can add in the phonics piece if needed. So I can give them the word hop, and they would move the letters up to the boxes. And then they would take the H away, and when I said, now we have the word hop, now change the word hop to top, and they would remove the H and replace it with a T. So I can also add in the phonemic piece with graphemes, and a grapheme is simply the written representation which connects to the phonics piece of reading. So if I have students that I need to add in the grapheme as well, I can do that. So I can do it on an oral level, but I can also do it on the phonics level of adding in the letter cards as well. And 3rd through 5th graders, I know that you may need to do a mix of both. If you're doing something with the grapheme or the written symbol for the word, for the letter, that would be great in small group. If I'm doing it orally, it's something that I could do with the whole class, and I could do between lining up for recess or waiting outside the music room, those kinds of things. So our first strategy is word chaining. And again, here's that example where students have taken those letters and they have manipulated them to form the different words, and they would visually be seeing and manipulating these words. So let's practice this strategy. And again, you could do this on the sound level, or I could also do it on the phonics level if I had letters attached. All right, so everyone, I want you to write the word cat, or say the word cat. All right, say the word cat, but add the s sound at the end of the word. What's my new word? Students would say cats. All right, boys and girls, I have the word cats. Now I want you to replace the a with the sound. And what do I get? And students would respond, cuts. All right, boys and girls, say the word cuts. Now say the word cuts, but replace the k with the sound. What new word do I get? And students would respond, ruts. All right, boys and girls, say the word ruts. Now say the word rut, but don't say the s sound. What word do I get? Students would respond, rut. All right, boys and girls, say the word rut. Now instead of say a. What new word do I get? And students would respond, rat. All right, boys and girls, I have the word rat. What happens if I replace the t with a p? What new sound do I get? Or what new word do I get? And students would respond, rap. And we would continue through. So how did you do on that? Were you able to word chain? And there are lots of lists out there that you can access that have these word chains already made for you. So word chaining is our first strategy. So our second strategy are simply different word games that you can play with students. So number one, you could do vocabulary guess. So you could say to the students, what does a person drive that begins with B? One student might say bike, another student might say bus. And so letting them kind of fill in that word, that category with a sound. What's a two-legged animal that starts with ch? They would say chicken. All right, say the word. Say the word quit. Now say the word quit, but so say the qu. What do you have left? Say the word quicksand. Now say quicksand, but don't say quick. And students would respond sand. So notice it's somewhat like word chaining, but we're doing this with an individual word. We're not chaining them. What is a category game? What are animals that begin with the sound? So this is kind of like vocabulary guess, but we could have lots of different options of answers. And you could make a category list. and keep a list on the board or have someone keep track of them. What animals have a short vowel sound in them? Rat, hen, bat, cat. And so notice in the category game, it's more open-ended. Whereas in the vocabulary guess, we're a little more limited. What does a person drive with be? We have bike and bus. But notice in the category game, lots of students could do answers. So you could have each student write an answer, think of an answer and share that with the class, for example. So vocabulary game is just a little bit broad. These are just a few word games. There are tons out there, but anything that gets kids to play with language and hear the sounds in words are very important games for even our older students to do. So let's take a moment to practice. If I said to you, we'll go back to our question, what animals begin with, what animals have short vowels in their names? Take a moment to write down, for 30 seconds, I want you to write down all the animals that you can think of. So I want you to pause the video and then see how many you can determine in 30 seconds. And when you're ready, start the video again. All right, let's try another word game that you can do. And that could be a game where I take letters and letter sounds and I have students blend them. Oh, boys and girls, what word do I get when I put these sounds together? A, n, t, s. I know the word is ants. Did you get ants? So that's another game that you could play with students. So let's look at our third strategy. And these are called Elkonin boxes. And on the screen you'll see a picture with 6 boxes. And what those boxes represent are phonemes or sounds within words. And it's a way to get students to do 2 things. Number 1, to represent and understand how a word is represented by phonemes or sounds, and then practice those with the sound level and also the phonics level. So let's see how this might look. So an Elkonin Elkonin boxes help students build phonological awareness by segmenting words into sounds or syllables into the boxes on the screen. They teach students how to count the number of phonemes in a word, not always the number of letters. For example, if I take the word check, I hear 3 sounds in that word. I hear the ch, e, k, but it's really 5 letters because ch would be together as one sound and ck would be together as another sound. So they learn that that word has 3 phonemes. And so it would have 3 sound boxes. They also help students better understand the alphabetic principle in decoding and spelling. Because not only do we want, does phonemic awareness and phonology help students decode, but it also helps them to encode through the spelling process and become stronger spellers. So let's look at these Elkonin box examples. So if I see the first example and I see the word big, what I might have is I might have 3 chips that students push. So if I say big, tell me the sound you hear in big. And they would push a chip up for the b. They would push a chip up for the I. A chip up for the g sound. So they would be pushing 3 sound chips for the word big. In the word pens, they would be pushing 4 chips up for 4 sounds. Cats, 4 sounds. Now look at the word plant. I have 5 boxes in my Elkonin box because there are 5 sounds in the word plant. And so what students are doing is they are simply pushing chips for sounds. Now, if we had students who are working with multisyllabic words, Notice that we can also do Elkonin boxes for multisyllabic words. And in this case, we are more than likely going to have the phonics piece because we will have these written out. And so look at the word pretending. If a student was struggling with that word, I might write pre in one box, tend in another, and ing in a box so that students would be blending and realizing that that word has 3 syllables. So this is how we can take Elkonin boxes and apply it at a higher level of phonics. And sometimes when students get proficient with this, many times all you have to say is that word has 3 syllables and students will see the word pretending. If I look at unhelpfulness, notice that I have 4 boxes for 4 syllables. Pepperoni, 4 boxes for 4 syllables. Educational, there are 5 syllables, so I had 5 boxes. So you could put each of these syllables into the Elkonin box to help students sound out words. At the beginning, that's going to be really important, but as students again become more proficient, if you say that word has 4 syllables, they will learn how to sound out that word on their own. So let's think about how these help with spelling. So if I said spell the word pretending, students could create 3 boxes and they could put their spelling, if they're spelling the word, they could put the different syllables they hear within the word to spell the word pretending. If a student was spelling the word educational, I could give them 5 boxes in the Elkonin boxes for them to write the syllables in order to effectively spell the word. So Elkonin boxes can work at the phonological, phonemic, as well as the phonics level. So you want to think about what's really going to help your student and where do you need to develop a higher proficiency with your students. So on the sound level, you'll notice that we on the screen have 2 color chips. The gray would be consonants and the reds are vowels. Sometimes when you're doing this with students, it's important to do certain colors, do a color for consonants and a color for vowel, because sometimes students still struggle with the difference between consonants and vowels. So this helps them to visualize that. So I could say to a student, what sounds do you hear in the word dog? And students would push the D up for D, the O vowel up here for the A, and the G for the G. So then they would say D, A, G. So pushing up the sounds helps them to see and hear. And again, notice that we're not connecting letters yet at this point. You may still have students that need to be able to do this with the sound level. Now let's look what it might look like with a word if we move to the phonics piece. So if I look at the word pre-cook, notice that I could put pre in the first box, cook in the second, so students know that that word has 2 syllables. And notice understand has 3 syllables, so I could place these here and have students blend the word together. Or I might just see the word understand and say 3 syllables. So this can also be applied to the phonics piece as well. And so Elkonin boxes are a fabulous strategy to use with 3rd through 5th graders. And it's also one that they will be familiar with from primary grades. So we're taking something they're familiar with and extending their knowledge of using this strategy in intermediate grades. So how can these skills be used in the classroom? We alluded to some of these a bit earlier in the presentation. So if we look at phonological and phonemic awareness activities, this could be 5 minutes of a warm-up in guided reading. These could be used during transition times during the day. The start of ELA instruction time. You could do it during work time and in small groups. You could also do these as seesaw activities and use these in your literacy workstations if you're adding the phonics piece. Or you could also do it auditorily with instructions within Seesaw and have students work through Seesaw auditorily. These are also great interventions, so think about how you can add these strategies into your ELA intervention time. If we look at Alconen boxes, again, these could be used during guided reading. They can be used to determine a word. They can also be used to teach a word pattern. You could use the chips and color code them, for example, with prefixes and suffixes and base words. Multisyllabic words. You saw me doing that earlier with multisyllabic words, meaning words with more than one syllable. In content area reading, think about when students are learning new words in science and social studies. You could do that as a whole class intervention with an Alconen box as well. And again, you can use Alconen boxes during reading intervention time. They can also be used to help spell words. Giving those boxes helps students to break down and improve and increase their spelling as well. So as we come to the end of this presentation, I hope that you have found some important elements that you can include in your classrooms to increase your students' phonemic and phonological awareness. So let's conclude by reviewing our learning intentions and success criteria and determine if we were successful. So our learning intention was as follows. We are learning to understand phonological and phonemic awareness so that we can help intermediate students become stronger readers. Have we met that goal? Do you understand the difference between phonological and phonemic awareness? Will these strategies help your students become stronger decoders? Are you successful? Can you determine the similarities and differences between phonological and phonemic awareness? And can you determine who to use these strategies with in your classroom to help develop your older students' reading abilities? I want to thank you for watching this presentation and for developing your knowledge in the intermediate grades of phonological and phonemic awareness. I'm Robin Dixon, and again, I would be more than happy to help you in your classroom implementing phonemic awareness and phonological skills in your classroom.